go. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. I know that we still will have folks coming in throughout as several of the committees are meeting right now. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Defense and Veteran Affairs Committee, and I have asked Representative Gladney to open us up in a word. What number are you, Representative? What number is your microphone? 12. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please bow your heads. Lord God, we thank you for this opportunity to be here today. Give us your wisdom to work together and to make decisions for those that have served our country and for those that we have been elected to serve. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. First of all, for the members of the committee, I would like to draw your attention to a couple of items that are in the packet that you have. The first of which is just a write-up of some of the budget and legislative highlights for our veteran community. There's a lot of great information in there. And then the second document that you have is regarding the military retirement legislation that was passed last year. There's you'll certainly, if you haven't already, as members of this committee, you'll get a lot of questions regarding that. So definitely something, if you read through that and it still is not very clear, please come see me and we'll make sure that you've got a great understanding of that because it is important. All right, now to kind of get into the meat of the meeting, we are very honored to have Commissioner Patricia Ross with the Department of Veteran Services here to provide us an update of what's happening in her department. Commissioner, if you would, first of all, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to come before the committee. And if you would, I'm sure you will, but if you could introduce the members of your team as well, please.
Mr. Chairman. Along with me today, I have Ms. Shelly Ann Simpson. She's our Executive Director of Field Operations and Appeals. And then I have Executive Director Mark Bannister, who's over Health, Memorials, Finance, and Development. So those two folks kind of serve as the executive directors for my entire department. So as was stated, I'm Trish Ross, the Commissioner of Georgia Department of Veteran Service, and I have to say I'm delighted to be here today. I know many of you, but I'm very excited to talk about not only what our department does, but talk about some of the issues your constituents may bring up to you, as well as kind of where we're headed as a department. And please ask questions as we go along. I've already spoken to a couple of representatives. I like questions, so with that, let's go ahead and get started. This is a new slide for us, and I think it's important that we distinguish ourselves from the VA. Many people know what the VA does, and the majority of my calls, I would say 99% of the calls, from constituents complaining about something, it is under the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. So here's kind of where we link and where we're different. So the VA, of course, VA Benefits Administration, we do a lot of work with them. Our folks, our 55 field offices, about 115 people, help file claims on behalf of veterans or their family members to the Veterans Benefits Administration. So we are a nonpartisan advocate for our veterans and their families to the VBA, who ultimately will decide whether they're going to grant that determination, that rating decision, et cetera. So for the National Cemetery Administration, we have 2 state cemeteries, and we are governed by VA rules. We're also inspected by the VA. We have when we build or we expand a cemetery, we have a grant process through the VA to get funding from the federal government, but that's kind of where we overlap with them. And then probably the most confusion comes with VA Health Administration. So we have 2 state war veterans homes, skilled nursing homes in Milledgeville and in Glenville, that are overseen by the VA. Again, we're inspected by them, as well as many other state health agencies. But the VA Health is most known for its hospitals, its clinics, its physicians. That's where you get your glasses, your hearing aids, prosthetics, apply for housing grants, things like that to adapt your housing. We do not have physicians, clinics, hospitals, et cetera. And so that is the main distinction between what the U.S. Department of Administration, the federal government, and your state government does. We are all state employees. Every 50 state has an organization like us, and we are here to help advocate for our veterans. So that's kind of the main distinction. If you go over our population, I know I've talked to several of you, Georgia is sitting about 700,000. A year ago, we were 9th in the nation for veterans, just shy. North Carolina beat us out this year. Happy to say we beat out North Carolina. We're now 8th. But you can see kind of where we fall nationally. But this slide, what it should tell you is, as you can imagine, our older veterans, we've got a decreasing veteran population. We've actually decreased by about 7,000 veterans from last year, but Georgia's staying fairly stable. We're seeing a lot of migration from the Northeast, where our population of veterans is not decreasing like it is in other states. In fact, in most states. Also, our demographics are changing. You can see where our number of women veterans is actually increasing by 2025 to almost 16% of our veterans population. And with that, I do want to thank the General Assembly. Back in 2017, y'all approved a women veterans coordinator for our department, and she has been very busy, hit the ground running since then. But it's important, I can speak to some of our women veterans in the room, that we have somebody focused on women veterans issues. Many times our women veterans feel invisible. A lot of times they don't think that they served when they're asked if they are a veteran, as well as they also have increased incidences of military sexual trauma that we can then get them through that process, which can be a little difficult for them to speak with one of our counselors. And so we've done a lot of different events, have focused with some Women Veterans Conference, have some things coming up this year. And so I just want to say thank you for allowing us to have that position so that we could put a focus on this growing population in our state. Because Georgia does have the fastest growing women veterans population in the nation. So here's something else that I thought it was important to go over. You might think somebody comes to file a benefit claim with Georgia Department of Veterans Service, and we have one touch point with them. That's not the case. As many of you know, if you filed a disability claim or filed for anything else with the VA, it may come back as a no. Or a rating something different than what you think you deserve based on your military service. And then it cycles back to us. So if something is either denied or comes back at a lower rating than you believe you are entitled to, or a family member is entitled to, because we do serve survivors, you can go to a higher level review, file a supplemental claim with additional information. It goes back to the VA. The VA can then potentially say no again, comes back to GDVS. It could then end up with our appeals division, which actually goes to the Board of Veterans Appeals and represents our veterans. That office is located in the regional office in Atlanta. So you can see it's kind of this cycle where in many cases it comes back to us if the VA renders a negative decision. And so not just one touch point, but many for a lot of our veterans. So I already talked about our declining population, but our compensation and pension brought into the state is actually increasing. That's what that left-hand slide shows. But you can see in this last year alone, Georgia Department of Veterans Service attributed specifically to our department is almost $3.6 billion in compensation and pension brought in via the VA. And so that number is increasing year over year, despite our numbers going down. And as you can imagine, I know many of you in the room are post 9/11 veterans, but a lot of our post 9/11 veterans have a lot of additional issues. I'll talk about the PACT Act in a minute, but those issues result in additional compensation that maybe some of our older veterans may not have survived with some similar conditions. We do have 55 offices across the state. 22 are co-located in the VA or a VA facility, either a clinic or the medical center. And we do that for two reasons. One, they don't charge us rent. And two, it makes it easier on that veteran. If they're having to bring us documentation from their doctor to say that this condition is related to their military service, makes it easy if they just have to go within that same facility and hand us that documentation. The 55 offices, a year ago, we had 50. So we're growing without increasing our end strength. So same number of people, but we're looking at the demographic shift within the state to make sure we're serving in those areas where we have the largest population of veterans. And that's where you can find all of our locations. You can search by, city, state, zip code, of course, state being Georgia, but zip code, just making sure y'all were awake, to find the office closest to you. Now, just to talk about kind of the demographics and the statistics since a year ago. So I've already talked about the veterans in Georgia. We increased our phone calls by 70,000 from last year to this year. We increased our office visits by about 20,000, which is significant. We have about the same number of employees. That hasn't changed. Have done 500 interments in our 2 cemeteries. And then our bed count's about the same. Actually, from last year, we've decreased a total of 14, and I'll talk about why that is. But you can see even in our appeals division, whether you have to go in front of a veterans law judge or we are able to resolve it without going in front of a judge, that's almost 5,000 appeals that were done by that about dozen-person office. So I added this slide in for the PACT Act, mainly because I know your constituents will be very interested in all of this information, and it's important to be informed. I know many of you have served yourself, so you know what these presumptive conditions are, but the PACT Act was the most substantive language kind of in our time that the VA passed. And so for the Vietnam era veterans, the big thing that they added was the 5 new locations that they now attribute to having Agent Orange exposure, as well as a couple new conditions. Hypertension, I know many of our veterans were waiting for that to come on the presumptive list. For our post-9/11 veterans and our Gulf War veterans, not only does it cover many countries there in Southwest Asia, but it covers a lot of very serious illnesses. And so you can see the list there. That being said, if you have a veteran that is having an illness or an injury that can be related to their military service and it's not on the presumptive conditions, send them to us anyway so we can help see if we can get that justified to the VA. But these right now have been handled by the VA since 1 January 2023 is when they started adjudicating PACT Act claims. And these go back to when the law was signed on August 10th of 2022. So how does that impact us in Georgia? Well, when we looked at our demographics and when our folks have served, both Vietnam era, Gulf War era, and later, that's about 500,000 of our veterans that could potentially be eligible under the PACT Act if they're having any of these conditions. So that's a significant number, and it's important to know that surviving spouses could receive benefits as well as other family members. There's lots of nuances to this act, so please just have their folks call our office, make an appointment, and come see us. Now, suicide prevention, General Assembly approved that in last year's budget, and we hired that individual on 1 July. As you know, one veteran suicide is one too many. She also has been very busy. We were fortunate to get somebody from the Guard who had been doing this for well over a decade. And we're doing a lot of things, not just training our own internal staff, but training other veteran service organizations. And we are one of 5 states that are recipients of the Staff Sergeant Fox grant from the VA, which is enabling us to now survey the folks that come into our offices, something that we've just rolled out this month, to see if they're at a heightened risk for suicide. And what happens is, depending on that little GAPS assessment, which is the Georgia Prevention for Suicide Assessment, depending on the color, high risk automatically, our veteran service officer calls 911, 988 option 1 calls GCALS to get somebody there from the crisis assistance line. We get them help immediately, and then we have a referral platform, which I'll talk about in a minute, that we can identify those that have other risk factors. They may not be having suicidal ideations when they come into our office, but they may be suffering from homelessness or may have had job loss, things like that, that may be a contributing factor. We have ways where we now get those folks referred to the appropriate agency and partner. So for our Georgia War Veterans homes, our admission criteria is the same, but we do have 2 homes. One is in Milledgeville and one is in Augusta, and they are both contracted out. The one in Milledgeville is through Pruitt Health. The one in Augusta is through Augusta University. Patient load, actually, since I did this chart, we're up to 142 in Milledgeville, and I think it's important to point out that the governor's budget actually adds some renovation money to the home in Milledgeville. We are constantly doing ADA upgrades in that facility. Both are much older facilities, and so you will see that come through with the governor's 2024 budget. And we've also reduced the number of patients in our facilities, mainly due to COVID and just infection control. We used to have 4-person rooms. Now we have 2-person rooms, so you can imagine that, of course, halves the number of veterans that we can accept. Which brings me to an important point. There was a Senate subcommittee this past summer that was asked to take a look at whether we needed additional war veterans homes here in the state. And so that report, I can get y'all a copy if you would like, did determine that we needed additional homes. You can see if you look at the map, we have 2 here in Georgia, and I'll point out our neighbors in South Carolina and in Alabama, who have half our veteran population, have double the number of veterans homes. And so what this report showed us is kind of, we need one kind of South Georgia is the number one area. I know Waycross areas where they looked, and that's based on not only demographics, but you're talking about the age of that population and whether they're currently engaging with the VA and VA benefits, that there was going to be a greater need there. And then looking at one in North Georgia. And you may ask, well, most of the veterans, if you've looked at the demographics, are here in the metro area. Why not the metro area? These were the 2 kind of immediate needs that study identified, and that the metro area actually had younger veterans, and that's probably more of a longer range plan, say 10 years on out, to potentially look at increasing the number of homes. We've had conversations with OPB. I know they would like for us to get our census numbers up in Milledgeville and Augusta. The challenge is we're kind of at saturation with some of the construction projects. In addition, a lot of individuals don't want to put their family members so far away from where they live. And so that's all in the study. But I did want to highlight that in case you do get questions. And then our transitional support unit, the state over the past few years contributed $6 million in matching funds. This was a matching project with the VA for something that no other state has, and we're hoping to open it sometime later this year. But what it does is it allows for our younger veterans who may be suffering from post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, other mental behavioral health, or physical limitations, whether it's amputation or something else, to come to our inpatient facility. It's not time-bound, which is what the VA does. They usually have a time limit on when you can come into their facilities. And because it's inpatient, we get them all of the therapies they need, in addition to the mental behavioral health side of things, as well as spiritual health, recreation, etc., and get them ready for independent living or reintegrating back with their family and their community. And so the family is a big part of this too. So it's kind of a proof of concept for us as a state, and we are looking forward to actually getting that open this year. That is located in Milledgeville, along with our War Veterans Home. It's on that same campus. Now, we kind of take care of veterans for the time they get out of the military until we render honors. So we have 2 state cemeteries held to national standards, just like your national cemeteries and your other VA cemeteries. Those are the requirements to be buried there. But you can see that we take care of everything once they enter our property. So the headstone, the grave site, all of that is covered by the VA and through our staff there at our 2 cemeteries. Milledgeville is 142 acres. You can see it opened in 2001. We've got all sorts of different types of options for our veterans and their eligible family members. And we do have a maintenance project in the 2024 budget. That's mainly for roads. That's one thing that the VA does not give us matching funds for, is that existing infrastructure. So we do have to fix some roads and some of the columbariums. And then our Glenville Cemetery, which opened in 2007, is 100 less acres. Beautiful. We have a lot of folks out of Fort Stewart interred there, but it needs to be expanded. We've had kind of record interments over the last few years, and so some money for design and expansion is actually, you'll see that in the 2024 budget. So our education and training division, most people don't realize this falls under us, and it doesn't in many states, but they approve all of the institutions and employers and apprenticeships that get VA funding. So GI Bill funding all have to be approved by the state approving authority. That's actually a grant that we get when you see federal funds coming to us in our veterans benefits line. That is for those people that go out and accredit and inspect all of these institutions and employers. You can see almost 1,800 schools right now are approved. We are leading the nation in on-the-job training programs that are approved, so an individual can use their GI Bill benefits to get some additional monies when they're going through an on-the-job training program here in the state of Georgia. And we're always out and about doing outreach to let employers know about the many options available to them. Which leads us to our public information division. So if you're interested, we do a monthly newsletter. We started that last May, and that usually highlights some significant change either within the department or the VA, as well as kind of highlight some of our folks out in the field that are doing great work on behalf of our veterans. But then our public information does the website. They do a lot for a 2-person team, and so if you need anything from us, they are there to help. I know we did some brochures earlier this week for somebody that was going to do an event. They're also in charge of our Vietnam Veterans Program. We started that quite a few years ago and have done, I think 26,000, and we probably need to update. We know it's over 25,000 recognitions of Vietnam veterans who weren't recognized at the time when they returned back to the United States. And so that's still an initiative of ours. So if you've got a community group, a faith-based group, any kind of group that has Vietnam veterans that have not been recognized by the state, please let us know. We will do the certificates. We have the pins. We can get our local office to come run a program for you. So we do that on a almost continual basis because we want to make sure all of our Vietnam veterans are honored. Now, we still also honor World War II veterans. I went to a birthday a couple of weeks ago for a World War II veteran, and Korea. So if you happen to have any of those as your constituents, we do have recognition for them as well. So Unite Us, I touched on this a little bit when I was talking about our field offices. We were fortunate to get a grant from the state of Georgia that allowed us to implement a electronic referral system. What this does is it allows us to connect to community partners who can meet veterans' needs. We, for the most part, do benefits, and some of our offices know who those community partners are, but Sometimes they don't. And this system will allow us to base it on geography and to be able to pull up who may be able to help for food insecurity, housing, education, employment, because our partners in this project are the Technical College System of Georgia, as well as the state workforce boards. So we've been rolling out in January. I know they're rolling out now. It's a 3-year project to try and get this in all of our offices across the state and to get community partners to join this platform with us. They do that at no cost if they're a not-for-profit, to be able to holistically meet veterans' needs and not continue to work in silos. And so that's actually our assistance request QR code. So if you run into any of your constituents who need help, all they have to do, if they have a smartphone, is scan that QR code, and that goes to a centralized hub support is what it's called, that will then get them connected to resources in their area. So we're excited about that. Yes, sir.
Commissioner,
Chairman Bonner.
is that the same, do you happen to know, is that the same platform that Warrior Alliance uses?
It is not. So theirs actually is through the American Warriors Partnership. Different, although they've agreed that they're going to use our platform. We do talk a lot, as we've discussed. This has been rolled out in quite a few states. We're the first state that's doing this solely around veterans. Many other states use this platform for health care, although it was created by 2 veterans who saw a need in kind of the chaos it is to try and find resources if you're a veteran coming out of the military, trying to figure out what's valid, what's not valid, where you can go for help, and what the criteria is that you need to meet in order to receive help. So this is our platform. North Carolina uses it, Rhode Island uses it. Warrior Alliance does not, but they've agreed to.
But this is something available for any nonprofit to.
Yes, sir.
And is it an application process? Or do you happen to know if there are certain, how well vetted organizations have to be in order to be a part of it?
So they do have to be vetted through our team and through the Unitas folks vets them. But what happens is if an organization is either they self-identify or we identify them as a partner that helps, whether it's in the veteran space or the veterans are just kind of a subset of who they help, we put the Unitas team in contact with that organization, and then there's information they have to fill out. The Unitas folks do training on the system. It's pretty in-depth, although the system itself is really intuitive to use as a case management system. What this does, and this is why I get excited about it, is it gives us data. It lets us see the outcomes. If I put in a referral, I can track that individual through the potentially multiple organizations they may need assistance from and see what happens and know that they've received the services. It'll also help us as potential funders come to us and say, hey, who's really working in this space that you believe we should fund? Well, we'll have data to say, hey, the Warrior Alliance in this case, or another organization, they've helped X many veterans. We can see that in our platform. We've got dashboards. It's also going to give us something very important that no other state has in the veteran space. We'll be able to see, based on all this national data that they import, social determinants of health. So right now, we can go by county level and veteran household to determine where there are the greatest needs here in the state of Georgia. And I know we're working with the Department of Community Affairs to identify some needs around housing. We met with DBHDD specifically around, suicide prevention. So this is going to be a great tool for us to get a better idea of where resources may need to be in the state.
Great. Chairman Prince, question?
Commissioner, thank you for
Yes,
your
sir.
presentation here. Just a couple of quick questions. On slide 9, you talked about the increase in, I guess, the volume of the information that you guys were doing. What do you attribute to that? Those numbers going up so high? More
we go.
veterans or?
No, not more
What do you-
veterans.
what-
It is the increase in the conditions that can be applied for through the Department of Veterans Affairs. So the presumptive conditions because that increased by about 23 different conditions. That has driven folks to our office. But it's also, we've done a concerted effort to do outreach to levels we've never done before. So we've been doing community resource fairs in combination with other organizations. We did a huge one in Cobb. We just did one in Canton. We're doing a site one in Marietta tomorrow. We've got another one scheduled in Rome. And then between the civilian aides to the Secretary of the Army, who are throughout Georgia, as well as our university system and our technical college system, we're trying to plan events throughout the year to get the word out about the PACT Act. And it's not just getting the word out about the PACT Act, but it's actually having our folks on site to take claims informations and get folks in the system, as well as partnering with the VA to do the health screening. So the numbers are going up because we've been really busy, sir.
More outreach, is
Yes, sir.
that sort of what you're looking at? But also, you talked about the women's, I think on slide 5, you talked about the women's population growing, and you're doing a lot of things for women veterans.
Yes, sir.
What about male veterans? What are we doing for them?
Well,
Or for us.
yeah.
I'm a veteran.
For you, everything that we would do for our veteran population. Predominantly, of course, our veteran population is male. So everything, just because right here it says, women are more likely to experience MST doesn't mean men don't experience military sexual trauma. All of the benefits and claims and all of the advisement and the advocacy is for any veteran. And again, doing outreach, we don't care. Kind of a veteran's a veteran. To me,
Right.
that's binary. And
That's what I was saying. Yeah. And that's my point.
yeah, and so we've been doing a lot with diversity. We've participated in Atlanta Pride for the first time this year, and so we're trying to reach all veterans.
So are you, and I'm assuming you have male counselors and female counselors.
Yes,
Are
sir.
male veterans allowed to speak? Do they speak with female counselors, or are they just
They
directed
can.
straight to a male counselor?
Yeah, they
was trying to see
can.
the
No, they're not.
separation
They're
that
not
we have.
directed to a specific counselor unless they request it, and then they can request one of the same gender, or they can go to whichever counselor is available. For the most part, unless you've experienced primarily military sexual trauma, most of our veterans just want somebody that's going to advocate and is competent, because we're trained to very high standards. They don't really care who that person is. But yes, they can choose if they so desire.
And
Our
as I-
offices usually have
And as
both.
I recall, during the discussion when we approved that position, there was also, that it also helped us to bring the state in line with basically some federal programs, right? That, if the VA was going to host a women's specific event, we felt it necessary to, that the state
sir.
have someone designated for that purpose. And, I think we've seen success in that area, and which is great. So, any other questions, Chairman?
No, thank you. Thank you for your
Thank
answers.
you.
All right.
Thank you for your service.
It's Representative Martinez, is that you, 27?
Commissioner, thank you so much for your presentation. What I'm hearing from the American Legion Post 233, which is in Loganville, is the homelessness problems that they're getting. A lot more homeless are going to that post for help. What are your numbers? Are you starting to see more of that, more of those numbers going up? And what are we doing about it?
So
Thank you.
anecdotally, yes. Can I prove that with numbers? No. So Department of Community Affairs is the one that tracks homelessness. They just did their point-in-time count a couple of weekends ago, or a couple of Mondays ago in January. So we won't actually see those numbers for another 6 months. If you look at the data, it says our veteran homeless population is decreasing. I don't believe that. I don't know if you've walked the streets of Atlanta or driven around here that you believe that. I will tell you those partners that we work with will tell you about 30% of the people they see that are experiencing food insecurity, housing insecurity, are veterans. So we know that number is higher. We're just evidently not reaching them. We do have our outreach team, which happens to be our Women Veterans Coordinator and Suicide Prevention Coordinator, again, because a lot of the issues around homelessness also could be related to potentially suicidal ideations. are doing outreach with programs here in Atlanta as well as outside of Atlanta to try and reach that veteran population. So we do a couple of things. One, we screen them to make sure if they're eligible for benefits, we get their claims filed. That is not a quick solution. But I will tell you, we also work with partners. So I know Chairman Bonner mentioned the Warrior Alliance, which is here in Atlanta. There's also a homeless program, VEO. For those of you who know VEO, they have a women's dorm as well as a man's dorm here in Atlanta. We work with them to get folks housed. We work with a refuge, and we work with, I mean, you name it, to try and get transitional housing to then work potentially with our VA homeless coordinator for more longer term solutions. Does that answer your question, Representative Martinez? Okay, thank you. We need to do more. I will tell you that right now, as a state.
Any other questions from the committee? I will just kind of highlight a few things that you mentioned, Commissioner. The Vietnam veteran recognition is certainly one I would highly encourage every member of the committee to put together one in your district, in your community. We did one several years ago, and we recognized about 80 Vietnam veterans that frankly had not been recognized previously, and it was not only a very emotional event, but it was also a great opportunity to expose those folks and their families to a lot of the services that are available. Because what we have found, and the commissioner reaffirmed this, is that we have a lot of capacity to help, but oftentimes we simply don't have enough veterans to take advantage of that. And we're seeing in our younger generations of veterans that they're not taking advantage of those benefits quite as much as some of our older veterans. So that's one thing. Also, a question for you, Commissioner, in terms of, and if you haven't experienced this yet, you'll get a call from a constituent that is going to ask you about help with their VA benefits, whether they're financial benefits or medical benefits. And the commissioner laid out in one of her slides kind of how that tracks through. A question for you, Commissioner, is for members of the legislature, do you recommend that our first call be to our local field office or to the Department of Veteran Services rather than trying to go straight to our congressional office, which sometimes I almost hate to point folks to the congressional office just based on history, and they're sometimes occupied with other things. But what do you recommend that how we handle the constituent services aspect?
Yeah, thank you for that, and I'm glad you reminded me of that. I had the opportunity to meet with Chairman Bonner earlier, and we are actually putting together a package for all of our state representatives and senators. You should have received a letter from your local field office kind of giving the data at the beginning of the year of how many people they've served, how much money they've brought in, et cetera. If not, we're collecting all of those, and we'll give those back out to you, as well as giving you kind of by your district who your local field office is. And so in the meantime, until we get those kind of created and out to you, you can call us. I mean, even I will tell you if it's VA health related, and I did share this with your chairman, while we're not VA Health and I can't schedule somebody an appointment, I certainly, if there is a concern from a constituent, can send that over to our counterparts in the VA. We do have a good relationship with them. I get those, Ms. Simpson get those all the time, and we can certainly help out. But we are going to build the packages to make sure everybody knows who their local office is, because with 55 offices, of course, we cover multiple counties and multiple districts, but you need to know who they are, because when you find a veteran or a surviving family member, we want you to send them to us.
Great. Representative Scott?
Hi, thank you for being here today. A lot of times when people try to file their disability, they have these outside groups where if we get you if we get you disability, you will have to pay $6,000, or you will have to pay $5 or $4, whatever amount to get the disability. So what would you say, how we could tell our constituents to not pay and go through the free process instead of paying someone to try to get them disability?
So Representative Scott, I think I planted you with that question. Excellent question. I would tell you, so I'm sure for those of you who are veterans, and even those who may not be, you're being spammed, whether on social media or just watching TV with ads on Camp Lejeune. They've started with the PACT Act. I've been getting calls. Those folks will charge 40% of whatever they get, which I think is kind of criminal. By law, you can go to an attorney, and they will charge at a minimum 30%. And in some cases, there are very reputable attorneys who are accredited by the VA, where the case is that complex. That may be the right decision for that individual. But I will tell you, we are certified by the VA. We are trained to very high standards. Every 2 weeks, we get new training and we have to get tested. If we fail the test, we could lose our job, and I even get tested. We have annual training every year where we're bringing the legal experts down from DC to talk about what's new within the VA. And so we can make sure all of our folks are literally experts on veteran law. To be able to be that free resource. And to Representative Scott's point, we're free. Now, granted, the state of Georgia pays our salary, so we're not completely free. We're paid for by the taxpayers. But we will not charge that veteran or their family member anything. That is what we're here for. That's our job. And so we are very honored to be able to do that job, and tell them to call us first. There are a lot of not reputable folks out there that may not even be accredited, and that could cause the veterans more problems in the long run, as well as cost them a lot of money.
All right.
Probably was about 2-3 months ago. They had a special, and they were talking about the disparities in people receiving benefits, basically dealing with people of color receiving benefits. We know that the benefits, every state is different. Probably every location where people apply for benefits may be different. But I know they were talking about the disparities in African Americans receiving the same benefits as others. So is that something that the state will tackle, or is it something that needs to be brought to the federal government? Because I think the report came from, I don't know if it was the state or the government, the feds.
I would think that would have to be tackled by the federal government, and I'm gonna, Ms. Simpson will give me a look if I'm saying something incorrectly. We have a large population of minority veterans here in the state of Georgia. In fact, about 60% of our women veterans are women of color. And I've not seen that disparity, but then again, we're in Georgia, and we have a high population, a very diverse population in our veterans. I don't know if you've seen anything like that. Okay, so it potentially could be in other states that maybe don't have the same high representation in demographics as Georgia, but we fight for every veteran the way we'd fight for any other veteran. That's just what we do.
All right, thank you. Representative Gladney, you had a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in the Augusta area, we had a service organization called Forces United that just recently stopped providing services. Is there another service organization in our area that you're familiar with that I could share that QR code with, that they could participate in terms of making sure that they are using that as an outlet to be able to collect data and be able to distribute that information to individuals so that they know where services are? is the first question. And the second question is about women's particular specific services that you offer. So I participate locally at Charlie Norwood with the Women's VA Medical Services. And they don't necessarily offer a whole lot of information when there are women-specific conferences and information being offered in our area. So if it's something that's channeled about women that may have to deal with issues relative to MSTs or mental health struggles or homelessness or whatever the case may be. And I'm a part of groups that we try to disseminate and share that information throughout. Is that something that would be a part of that information, that QR code that you do share? How would I be able to disseminate that information throughout my local community?
Okay, so we can make sure that, I know I have your contact information. We can share that with our Women Veterans Coordinator to make sure that anything, especially happening in and around the Augusta area, from the women's side, because we do work with the Women Veterans Coordinator there at the VA, but we also have our own events and do a lot of collaboration because, again, this is a population that we're trying to reach. So we can make sure that you get all of the information for your area and for the state if that's what you desire. As far as your first question in joining forces, I've known that organization for a very long time and am saddened to hear that they are no longer. In the Augusta area, I can pull up our Unitas platform to see kind of who else is in that space. They used to be the Augusta Warriors Project, and of course that kind of birthed America Warriors Partnership, which is still in the Augusta area. So that is still a very large resource for y'all, even though they may not be quite working locally like Joining Forces was. We still use them, they still use us. We do a lot of co-referrals back and forth. I know that because we are working with the technical college system, Augusta Tech is a good source for getting folks connected. But I can see if I can pull others in the Augusta area for you that we may have already onboarded to the system. We're still in that process. We've sent a couple of hundred of organizations, and the Unitas team has been working to get those folks onboarded to the platform and trained. And so we're initial stages, but I can get that information to you.
Thank you. And running short on time, so last question, Chairman Prince, you had.
Yes, it just goes back to Chairman Bonner's thing a little while ago. I received that email. I received the letter talking about who they service, but it wasn't my area that I got one for.
Really?
So that happens sometime. I understand that, but what I never see in there is a phone number to who I can call, a point of contact, not in Atlanta,
Right.
but somebody.
No, they're supposed to be putting that on that
And
letter.
that's-
We will take
and
that as a
well,
note, sir.
But do we have, and it goes to the question, do we have legislators, or do you have a legislative, for like what point of contact, so as legislators, if we need to call and get a quick answer or something like that, that we got a number we can reach out to, and then that person can direct us wherever we need to go?
That's our main line, which is 404-656-2300 or 2312. I can get that to you or can give you a card, and I will tell you those calls are usually routed to myself or to Ms. Simpson. We serve as your legislative point of contacts to try and resolve some of those issues.
Is that it goes like a voicemail thing, and they just pick
Yeah,
a
somebody
person
should be
picks up?
answering it.
Okay, good,
yes.
yeah.
And then depending on which one of us is in the office, they then send that caller to us. Or
Great.
via email. So I get a lot of constituent questions via email, which usually is the best way because then it gives me enough information where we can reach out to the veteran themselves and kind of get some more data to help them. You're
Right.
welcome.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. We're so grateful for you taking the time and your staff to come out and give us this presentation. I know that there'll be a lot of follow-ups, so we look forward to keeping this conversation going, and this committee looks forward to working with you to serve our veteran community. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank y'all so much.
And our last order of business, we do have one new face on our committee. He is not an intern. He is an actual representative. And so, Representative Cannon, if you would, I think you got to press the button. All right. Okay. And
Good.
now, if you would, just introduce yourself to the committee and give us who you are, where you're from, and what you're about.
Okay. Chaz Cannon. I'm from District 172. I replaced Sam Watson. The district covers all of Colquitt County, which is where my home is in Moultrie, the western part of Cook County, and the northeastern part of Thomas. But I joined the military at age 18, went to West Point, and graduated at age 22, went right into Fort Benning, and did 3 tours to Iraq. I'm still in the Army Reserve, and I think I made the colonel list, but I'm not sure. I got to verify with that. But I love the military, and I appreciate being on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. We appreciate your service and looking forward to working with you on this committee. Is any other business need to be brought before the committee? If not, we stand adjourned.
All right, it's 3 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started. What's your number? Okay. Y'all, welcome to the new 22-23 House Industry and Labor. And I asked Representative Hagan if she would open us in prayer.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for the opportunity to meet to discuss issues that deal with industry and labor in this state. I pray you would grant us wisdom and that you would cause our discussions to be beneficial to the people that we represent and to you, most importantly. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And actually, they have trickled in. First order of business is we are going to pass our rules, and you're welcome for not having y'all come in just to do that. So y'all have probably seen these over and over. So if anyone is open to making a motion to pass, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, at the proper time, move
That would be this
to
time.
adopt. Yes. So I move to adopt the Rules Committee.
Thank you very much. And we have a second, Vice Chair Devin Seaball. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you very much. Custom, let's run down real quick because the people in the audience and online. And I've gotten texts from several members who are either in traffic or felt like they needed to be in meetings where they were actually taking a vote. So if they're like me, they will watch and listen online. That's my new podcast, is watch other committee meetings. Been for too long when that's your interest on the road. So we're going to start down there with Bonner. If y'all will just light the board up, and I will recognize y'all and tell us, as you said, who you are, what you're about.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Josh Bonner, District 73, includes portion of Fayette and Coweta counties.
And I'm State Representative Mike Cameron, and I represent District 1, which has Walker and Dade counties, northwest Georgia.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay, it's over here. Representative Matt Barton. I'm from Calhoun. I got Gordon County and part of Floyd County now.
Yep.
Is it on?
Yep.
Is it on? Okay. I'm Representative Barry Fleming, and I represent District 125, which is Columbia County and McDuffie County.
20.
24.
I was 24.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm Representative Barry Fleming, and I represent District 125, which is Columbia County, and McDuffie County, which is over near the Augusta area.
Y'all tell us what you do.
Some people accuse me of being a lawyer, but not all my clients.
Ready? Lisa Hagan. I represent District 156 in South Georgia. I have 6 counties between Macon and Savannah, south of I-16, and I'm a former school teacher. Is that enough?
Good afternoon. I'm Devin Seabaugh, represent District 34, which is northwest Cobb County, 1/14th of Cobb County. And I am in the healthcare business, specifically pre-hospital care.
19.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Representative Dewey McLean of House District 109. That's Gwinnett County. That's the cities of Lilburn, Lawrenceville, Norcross, and Duluth, which is the largest county in Georgia. And I'm in labor.
You're in labor?
Let's call the EMS guy if you're in labor. We don't want that to happen right here.
Okay. We got one of them, huh? Mr. Chairman, we got one of them? Okay.
Hurry, bolt some water.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Kennard.
Yes, I'm Greg Kennard, District 101, Lawrenceville and Suwanee up in Gwinnett County. I'm a pastor and a nonprofit executive of a transitional program to end homelessness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Pedro Marin. I represent House District 96 in Gwinnett County, part of the cities of Norcross and Duluth, and I'm a business consultant.
Thank you, Chairman. I am State Representative Mandisha Thomas of the 65th District. I service South Fulton, Douglas, and Coweta County, and I write healthcare policy and procedures for a living.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Doreen Carter, represent House District 93. That is East DeKalb, Stonecrest and Lithonia, Rockdale, Conyers, Newton, and it's a slew of cities over there in Newton County. By profession, I'm an accountant, nonprofit executive, and I own a financial education business.
Thank you, Chairman. Casey Carpenter, City of Dalton, south end of Whitfield County in Northwest Georgia, District 4. I'm in the restaurant hospitality business, and I just noticed, I feel like I'm sitting on the wrong side here. We need a little bit of commingling of colleagues, if you will, over here. And I am not in labor, but I have 4 kids, so I am well versed in it if I need to be called upon.
Yeah, thank you for noticing. I've always threatened I'm going to start signing seats if y'all sit right and left. Like Congress, we're not like Congress. All right, well, I'm excited. On our agenda today, we have our newly minted Commissioner of Labor, Bruce Thompson, and he's going to tell us whatever he wants to tell us. Kind of gave him a broad agenda vision, what he expects of us, and he might get a few questions of what we expect from him. And so, Commissioner, come on up. Why does it say timer?
We're live.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We appreciate the opportunity to come and just kind of share a little bit about your agency. I say that because it is a new day. Many of you throughout this building ask me to go and run for this, take the reins, and make a difference. And that's what I hope you're already seeing. Let's talk a little bit about that. This is not a partisan situation. It's a bipartisan situation when we have constituents that are out there that lose their jobs and they need the opportunity to gain benefits. We all went through the pandemic, and I'll tell you a little history about this. I was on this side, or your side, over in the Senate when we were going through that, and I had a perspective. All I knew is I had thousands of people that were calling me, and I couldn't seem to give them relief, and it affected my ability to be a legislator. I didn't understand why until we got in. Here's really kind of the status. I don't know, this is echoing a little bit. Is that okay? How's that? Is that better? Okay. Here's a little status of the history of why, because I believe when you're trying to problem solve, you want to get to the root first, because if we just throw money at it or throw programs or processes and you don't get to the root, all you've done is exasperate it. You see, our system was built in 1982. It's the oldest system in DOL in the country. So for some of you who have a background in technology as I do, you can either rewrite the code or the foundation of it, like some states have done, or you can layer. Think of it as back in the day when you had a car that had no air conditioning. You could afford to get air conditioning like I was. You take it in, they take the dash out, and they bolt in an air conditioner. It's not an integral part of the system. And that's what we've done at the Department of Labor. It has serviced us or served us okay for years until the pandemic hit. Here's why it happened in the pandemic. Because of the process of which we do claims then and today is we relegate most of the processes to human capital. You're right, human capital. Most of you in your businesses and most of the other states have used mechanized or technology where a lot of this processing can be done and monitored and then give you reports. We do not have that ability. So a couple years ago, you remember, we almost had our bond rate downgraded. Do you remember that? Okay, and it was, and arguably we said, well, it's because they're not complying. The reason they weren't complying, they didn't have the ability to pull the reports. So they had to stop what they were doing, deploy people to be able to do the audit. So any of you in here that have a background in accounting, or if you're a business owner like I am, that's not a good place to be. We have a system in there, built in 1982. We have added systems to it to try and make sure it's as current as we can. Our challenge we have now is, not only is it on premise, which we all know, you should have that system in the cloud. And you go, why is that? All of you in the room, we have your information. Every one of you. If you're employed or been employed, we have your information. 2 streets away, not too long ago, and we can argue why it happened, but it did happen. We had some riots that took out windows on Peachtree. 2 streets away. Can you imagine if they would have done that on our building where our servers are and got a hold of that information? That's right. That's a status that we have right now. One of the first things we're trying to do is LAS. It's called lift and shift. Get it off premise, get it in the cloud where that information is not only protected, but we shove or shift the risk if there's ever a breach to that vendor. All of the other agencies that I know about are either done it or moving towards that. 8, I think, are finished right now according to GTA. We want to do that. That's to protect us, because you know, as legislators, if we have a breach, they're coming to you and to me. So we want to fix that, and it's the right thing to do. We are then moving towards how do we modernize that technology for the next risk we have. We know at some point we will have a recession. May not look like it today because we're roaring. But I will tell you, our unemployment is starting to creep up, even though we have a lot of jobs coming here. And you go, how can that be? Here's how. The shift from modernization of us really being able to see what's going on there versus just processing claims, over to what happened on a vote that I took as well a couple years ago, regrettably now, is to move Wagner Pizer over to Technical College of Georgia. Here's why I say that. Technical College of Georgia under Commissioner Dozier does a fantastic job. They started here under his reign. I would say we all are very impressed and proud of our technical colleges, but they're an academic institution. Our career centers are charged federally. It's not my decision, it's federally, to help anyone that comes in there. That could be homeless, could be displaced, could be somebody that just wants a job, could be somebody coming out of the cold and they say they want a job. Federally, we cannot turn them away. Can you imagine if we actually move them to a technical college? Are we prepared to put armed guards everywhere in TCSG? But let's go back to why the unemployment rate's changing. In the life cycle of the Department of Labor, someone comes in, they're unemployed, we get them set up for benefits. And by the way, we are working on making sure that's much quicker and it's done right. And we can talk about that in a minute about some of the technological things we're doing. We get them on benefits, okay? Those that are legitimate. Then we want to make sure we can get them back into the economic cycle, because we can all agree we don't want to sustain somebody just on unemployment. In the past, that life cycle was they're on our unemployment roll, they're receiving benefits. We're then going to look at them and say, are you equipped to go back into the workforce? Do you need resume support? Do you need any of the other support? Are there jobs that match you up with the skill set you have, yes or no? And if not, how do we get you to that point where there are jobs out there? So you follow me so far? Life cycle. When you move a couple of those positions over to the technical college, I have no way to know whether you applied for a job. Some of you in this room said, at some point, we need to break the benefits of somebody that's on that cycle. If we just become a UI, just an unemployment center, where all we do is that, you will see that unemployment rate continue to skyrocket, because you have disconnected the life cycle. The life cycle called a one-stop that the feds designed for us to do. And by the way, if you go to these career centers in your areas, these are in your areas, or they should be in your areas, because we need to represent the entire population, right? We can agree with that. When you go into a career center, people were cross-trained. So today, the chairman came in. Sorry, I'm going to make you unemployed for a minute. He comes in and he applies for benefits. Follow me? That is paid out of a UI grant. See, most of our funds come from the federal, and it's in different buckets, and you have to comply with those buckets. So the UI grant is to get people on unemployment. It's on the unemployment side. But then let's just say in 4 months, he's still unemployed. He comes back and he's like, listen, I've got to help with a resume because I'm changing careers. Today, or let me rephrase this, a month ago, the person that helped him get onto unemployment and fill out the claim could shift over and take that hat off and help him with whatever needs he has. But they can't charge that UI grant because it comes out of another bucket. You follow me so far? Yes? Okay. When you take those away and you take those grants away and someone comes in that I'm federally charged with helping, what do? Do I turn you away and send you to the college? Now I've broken federal law, regulation. Or do I go ahead and help you, of which they have to charge somewhere, they're not going to work for free. Do I charge the UI grant? And if I do that, I put our UI grant, DFUTA, at risk. I don't think any of us in this room want to see that grant pulled away because we're not compliant. Y'all follow me so far? It's a state of a state to you to understand kind of the interesting position we're in. Well, that's why we're coming to you and talking about what we've got to do. Sometimes in life, our best intentions have unintended consequences. We're here to tell you that we've got some unintended consequences we've got to address, and we're working on that. Let's go to some technology. One of the things I found as a legislator is nothing more frustrated than my AA, or at the time was Jenna Purpura or Jen Dose. People would call and say, I can't get through the DOL. I don't know where I'm at. I'm on appeal, whatever that is. And we would say, let me take your name and number. I'll see what I can do. The weight got shifted to us in our offices. Listen, we can all say we're servants and we want to help our constituents, but that is not what we're experts in, and we got 100 other things to do. So then there was a decision to send us, and some of you may know and some not, an Excel spreadsheet where we could just, some of you know what I'm talking about, put their name and number on an Excel spreadsheet and send it over to the DOL. Yeah, that's a little problematic. We have already got a program that's ready to be introduced this next Friday to you. It's not what I want it to be, but it's a start. What this program does is when someone calls in, they can simply enter their information in, and it will, through a series of questions, give you limited access to their claim to be able to see it. It is not what I want for you long term because I don't want you to be put in the box of helping them and then you always help them. What you will have shortly after that is the first section. The first section should be, we are not skirting our responsibilities. Same information, hit submit. You have a record, goes over to someone that's already set up. They are committed to General Assembly and executive branch questions. When it comes over, their charges that day, get a hold of those people, give disposition, put it back in the system, call it a contact management database. You will then see. You'll get notified. We've solved it. Here's where it's at, and the constituent as well. So you're in the loop of knowledge, but you're not sucked into being a DOL specialist. You follow me? That program I said that is already built is going to drop down, which is what I prefer. And if we ever have another pandemic or something happens and we're behind, as a backup, you would still be able to go in and see the claim. I'm telling you that because in 18 days, that's already getting ready to get rolled out. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on in our state with DOL. This is not to talk about the previous administration, it's to talk about real time. When I walked in and started introducing myself to the people around, the first thing I said to them is, hey, my name's Bruce Thompson, I'm the commissioner. And they said, I know who you are. And they were very reluctant because they had this perception that we were going to do certain things and take certain actions. Some of those actions are accurate. I'm going to be very personal. I'm not going to be transactional. We're going to be relational. So over the last 18 months, what we have done is we have spent time helping each and every person understand my role as commissioner is a position. No more, no less, no more important than anyone else, just someone that occupies a seat with different responsibilities. From the janitor to me, we are all charged with making sure we're handling the people outside. To some of you may think that's ludicrous. It's called buy-in. And what we have now is a cultural change already happening. From the time someone hits the campus, they're charged with Get your face up, look somebody in the eye, and greet them. Fake it till you make it if you have to, because it may be the very last time they're on this earth. Why? Because we're in a servant role. That is permeating that entire building. We also are changing some things that might be important to you. DOL lost somewhere between 9 and 11 people that were working there during the pandemic. They died during COVID or are the COVID related. There's no evidence in that building that we lost people. We're going to honor them as you walk in the building. Why? They're members of that family, just like we have here when we've lost some people. So I talk about culture because we need that culture for them to then understand we're here to serve you and the constituents. We already talked about what we're trying to do technologically. Let's talk about our building. We've had some facility neglect. It is what it is. But currently right now, we have an air quality test going on to see what the air quality is over there. We suspect we have some serious problems. I'll let you know, it's not to air out our laundry, but we are going to be spending your money that's come in, taxpayers' money, to fix those. We've got a water leak coming into the server rooms in that building over there. It's leaking in through the ceilings. It's leaking in through the floors. Every time we rain, it comes up and we have to get it out of there. We're going to address that. So we've got a lot of issues and facilities here, but then around our state. We have someone deployed already, Louis DeBrew, that you know, is charged with going around the state right now, every one of the 41 facilities, take an inventory of the people, our human capital, take an inventory of the building, take an inventory of our processes. Get that back to us as soon as we can. Do we need to spend resources on the people? Do we need to spend resources on the buildings? Or do we need to change the processes? And I'll have that report back to you within 30 days. It is our commitment to make sure you know what's going on at DOL. No longer are we going to be siloed. We've already been to the federal government. Again, I said we've got these revenue sources or grants that come to us. We traveled up there, Ethan and I, you know Ethan Stiles, our COO, traveled up there Sunday night, all day Monday, and spent with 7 members of a congressional delegation on both sides, right? This is not a partisan issue. And we shared with them kind of the nature of where we're at. We're all elected to the people. So that means we better be prepared for the next spike in claims. Let's talk about what spike of claims means. Typically, we run about 250,000 claims a year. Do you know what happened during the pandemic? Almost 5 million claims. If you don't have a crisis management plan in place, that's problematic. But let's even talk about if you don't have a system that can even handle it because you're processing things with human capital. That's a problem. And then in the pandemic, we had people off-site because of the pandemic. That's really what happened. I wish they would have shared that with us. I wish they would have had a relationship with us. I wish they would have been open to our assistance. For some reason, it wasn't. I'm here to tell you, you will know what's going on in your agency. It's not mine, it's yours. We will commit to keep telling you about that. So we're going to try and prepare so we don't have that. Let me shift back again. We talked about modernization. We talked about people. We talked about procedures and so on that's going in there. And then we're talking about a culture. So let's talk about culture last. The one thing on everyone's mind right now across the country is the rise in homelessness. No one has really tackled that in a way that they see any marginal or measurable success. Sure, there's probably this gentleman I thought I heard or someone said that that was one of the things that they're trying to do in their nonprofit. There's great work that's being done, small scale. But government-wise, the government has not figured that out. We have a plan, once we do this, to deploy, to be able to go and see if we can get between 10 and 20% of the people on the street back into the cycle so they're now back into our economic engine. It will help close the gap that we have right now with the unlimited number of jobs we have, hundreds of thousands, where we're looking for workers. But more than that, we can instill some dignity in some people and put some families back together. There's 4 verticals we want to work on, and then I'll stop. Campaigned on this. Our state, roaring with economy. That's a success story. The problem is it won't be a success story unless we have workers, because eventually those companies will come after the jobs of my business, and yours because they have got to get up and running. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to put our business at risk. First, are incarcerated. We're still in the top 10 of the country in most incarcerated state. Not here to argue about the incarcerated. I'm here to argue for when they come out of serving their time, we want them to be employed and gainfully employed so they don't go back in. We can all, bipartisan, we can agree with this. We got to change the process of how that's done. As a former military person, when you're processing out, spend a lot of time making sure you're ready to reintegrate into general pop. There are some success stories in Metro Atlanta of doing some of this, but it's not holistic across the state. The Department of Labor should be doing that. We should be lining people up that are interviewing far before they come out. If we're preparing you to be released, it should not just be that you have an ID and a probation officer. We should be using the resources we already have. And by the way, I'm not asking for more appropriation for this. I'm saying we will be doing this within the scope of what we should be doing. We should go in and make sure you have the essential skills to go and then be gainfully employed and then marry you up. So when you walk out, you're ready to go to work. Our veterans coming back. We're seeing more and more numbers of veterans that are hitting the homeless population. We can argue that it's PTSD. We can argue all the kinds of things, but the reality is that is increasing. We should do a better job of making sure our veterans are ready to be reintegrated, not just with our large companies, but the small as well. Most of you voted on the apprenticeship bill. We had that last year. I was one of the co-authors of that. They do it overseas. We do it on the south side of town. It should be across the board, taking young people, getting them involved in understanding the value of work. And the last is something unique. Our state is a growing population of retirees. Arizona does a fantastic job. Not all retirees are 85 years old and ready to call it quits. There are a lot of individuals that are in that 50 to 65 range, still have gas in a tank, but they don't necessarily want to go work retail for $18 an hour. They may be a middle manager, business owners, or whatever. They have the institutional knowledge and skill sets with no way to marry that up with a 25-hour job opportunity. And we seek to be able to do that through our Employ Georgia and other websites we already have set up. So we have a plan to be able to fill that funnel, but we have to deal with what we have first, which is our foundational basis. We've got to get our technology in line. We got to make sure we put some of these things back together that we have pulled apart. So we're doing what our constitutional and our federal requirements are before we have bigger problems. Mr. Chairman, with that, that's kind of a state of the state, and I'll hush and let you ask questions. Then I have some asks afterwards.
Okay, very well done. Yeah, we're going to get to those. Couple of questions, or one comment is, and we've already talked to Sam, going to try to line up a visit to DOL so we can actually see. But first of all, who is this Sam guy with a strange last name, and why does that matter to us?
Okay, we talked about people. So one of the things that we talked about is making sure that you had a pipeline into DOL. Not all of you can jump in a car and run over 6 blocks, nor do you want to do that. So I knew I wanted to have someone here as a representative. Companies do it. They're called lobbyists. Sam is not a lobbyist. He is our legislative affairs. Sam Dindoffer. Sam, will you stand up, please? Sam's responsibility is to the legislative and executive branch and limited with some of the lobbyists, but primarily yours and executive branch. If you have constituent issues, you have a portal to put it on, but you also have a face. And his job is to make sure, I am not hiding from here, but I am everywhere trying to make sure we're solving this as quick as we can. So he's an extension. So Sam is, he is the face of the agency here while you're in session, but part of our external affairs. In addition to that, we have Wesley Ross for the business community out there. We also have Louis DeBrew, who is working on the faith community around the state. When we have this recession, the faith community gets hit pretty hard. They don't know how to access DOL. We want full access.
Very nice. Representative Kennard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. You're kind of singing my song on the homelessness and the incarceration.
Nobody's ever said I could sing.
Something I run into all the time with clients that I serve, which, by the way, 10 to 15% of them at any time are veterans that we're seeing. State IDs. maybe a practice for DDS and DOC to work together to make sure that someone who's reentering has a state ID, but that's really, really not happening well. Didn't know if there's anything the DOL could do to maybe help that process. Another thing is criminal records. Most of the 4.5 million criminal records that are currently in our GCIC system are for nonviolent offenses, or more importantly, are arrest-only records. Mm-hmm. There's 2.5 million arrest-only, no conviction records that are still popping up on job applications and employment housing. We're promised in this country that you're innocent till proven guilty, but that's not true with our arrest record policy. It pops up even though you are not convicted. So do you have any insight on that from your perspective?
So I'll take the first question, and that is, I hope you're already seeing we are very collaborative. That extends to other agencies. Goodness, when we were talking about the fraud that happened, some of that's legitimate fraud, some of it's not. They just report there were some 280 to 300 current state employees that committed fraud by taking benefits. We've seen that report, right? Not all of that's fraud. Let's keep in mind, when you make a mistake, that's unintentional. When you intentionally commit fraud or you intentionally mislead someone to get a benefit, that's fraud. Some of these fraudulent cases were simple in that, when I say simple, meaning people just didn't understand. Even some legislators. If you were a legislator and you were getting paid, even though we're part-time, you were still receiving benefits. If you filled out an affidavit thinking that you had lost your job somewhere else, which you did, you may have misinterpreted that as, I don't have any benefit coming here. And if you'd have filled that out and got benefits, DOL is coming asking for those back. But they're hitting this record as fraud, okay? I bring that up to say, why? Because we are not coming after people from a punitive standpoint as we're going to try and prosecute everyone. What we simply want to say is if you made a mistake, form or pay back the restitution if you weren't. And then the bad actors, many of which are out of our state, we're coming after that. That's first, and that's important. IG and I are working together as well as the other agencies. But now let's go to what you were talking about. All the other agencies, we should be sharing information to make sure we're making educated decisions to help our constituents, the people of Georgia. And that is a good example of that. So yes, we are working in collaboration. The second thing you were talking about is I don't have any insight into, nor do I have legislative authority to work on something that I think we've been working on a number of years, and that is criminal justice reform and or expunging of records and so on. I will tell you, we plan to make sure we're doing everything we can to help marry up employers with jobs with people that want to go to work. The other part, respectfully, sir, would be on you to enforce. I have no enforcement on that, so I'd respectfully ask for you guys to use your muscle.
May I ask one more question?
Yeah, but I can sort of help answer that. I am third signer this morning on a bill from Tyler Paul to fix that very thing on expungement. So we're working on it.
With GJC?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. One more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Casey.
Okay, one more question.
Yes, sir.
But do you see that still as a barrier?
Absolutely. Anytime someone that wants to be gainfully employed has something on their record. Listen, I had my identity stolen. It took me 6 years to get it cleared. I didn't do anything wrong. We need to make sure we remove barriers to let them get back into society economically and benefit from a number one economy in the country.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we've got several, but Tyler Paul's got a great bill on that very exact thing. Anybody else? Representative Carter.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your presentation. So you mentioned that you all are moving
Ms. Carter, get a little closer to the mic.
Okay. You all are moving to the cloud. So my first concern is protection. So how confident can we be that personal information is going to now be in the cloud with the Department of Labor? Let's try to make sure I said the right name of it.
Sure. DOL. You're as confident as you are with all the other information, with all the other agencies you have. Right now, they're in the exact same proprietor of that information.
Okay, I was just having a Secretary of State flashback. That's
Well,
what I was actually
I understand that, but I mean, look, DDS, look at your driver's license, look at all. They've all moved to the cloud because it's more secure than having it on premise.
Okay.
On premise, you've got to trust me, and then anybody comes to our premise. These are very large companies, and we are in the midst of moving down the road of contracting through our state agency that has already gone through this with 8 other agencies. So
Okay, thank you. And so my ask would be, since you did share that you all should be in the community, and many years ago, the office on Covington Highway in, I don't know if that's Decatur or Stone Mountain, depending on where you are, I don't know if it called Fire Move, and they sent it to North DeKalb. So there isn't a DOL location career center in East DeKalb.
Okay.
We would like to have one back in East DeKalb. And if you need a location, we could find you something in my district.
Okay. So if I may,
That's my
Mr. Chairman, there's a good opportunity to introduce you to another member of my team. So she walked out on me. Wow. Dang. Her responsibility as special assistant to me to keep me out of trouble, and she walked out. No, I'm just kidding. No. Hannah Harding. Many of you seen her down here. She's worked for me 5+ years in my companies, was in our C-suites and our software companies and so on. Very talented. She's a chief development officer, so helping with culture, but also truly special assistant to me to make sure I am where I'm supposed to be and do the things that I need to. And I would ask Hannah if you take note and get with this representative so we can identify what that looks like and see if we can start down the road. And if that makes funding sense, if we can do it, why would we not do that?
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Vice Chair Seaball.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, just a comment. I
Yes,
want to
sir.
thank you for running. Thank you for the job that you're doing. You've obviously put a lot of thought into this. Your presentation today was very helpful to me, and we look forward to your leadership.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. I believe you said you had an ask, and also maybe any preview to a legislative package if you have one coming, but also any ask you might have.
Sure. So first thing is, and again, this isn't to take shot at the previous administration, it's just a fact. So for 25+ years, if you owned a business, there was an assessment fee that was charged to you that came to the General Assembly, because it always comes to the General Assembly, and then it's appropriated to the Department of Labor as a part of funding mechanism. It needed to be reauthorized last year. And it was moving very well through, and then for whatever reason, we dropped the ball, and the last day it was not called up, and that fee sunsetted. And we talked about many people about way to reauthorize that, and we thought the best way to do that is have it pass, but let's wait a year. Because some of you have already seen it, and you're like, why would you not go after that in our fiscal year? Because it would cause some real challenges for businesses as well as accounting. So it would be like, we're doing a mulligan for a year, but we need to put that assessment fee back in. You just gave your businesses a free year. Let's just say that. We're giving property tax maybe. We're giving our businesses that assessment fee. That is a part of a legislative package. It's just cleanup, going back to the way it is. The other is constitutionally, we had a rate of what we charge businesses. And that rate needs to be reauthorized. We are a General Assembly that likes sunsets, so you can reevaluate. That was part of that same package. So when that sunsetted, the rate of which we're charging for unemployment is not constitutionally charged. And in essence, it could go up to our business community. We want to go back and constitutionally put it back the way it was to lock that in. That is one of our legislative asks. Pretty simple cleanup, down and dirty. It's just all we're doing is reauthorizing. Again, we dropped the ball. We should have done it. We're asking to do it.
When you say we, you mean the Senate.
You know, I'm not a member of the Senate, but I do have plenty of colleagues and friends over there, just like I do here.
Go ahead.
But thanks for pointing that out, Mr. Chairman. The other is our appropriations package, right? And so we have significant, as I've laid out here, opportunities. One of the things I'm trying to do, Ethan Stiles, as many of you know, is already at 260 hours in 18 days. I thought I worked hard. The dude is just nuts. Top to bottom going through things, traveling with me. And we've outlined not once, but literally needs. And my job is to then, all elected officials, say, here's what you're faced with. Federally, going back up to D.C. Monday to meet with our U.S. senators, as well as another senator on the Republican side out of state that's worked on homelessness and done very well. But to say, here's what we're faced with, you are the ones that are charged with telling me what you want fixed. The original appropriation package that we're asking for, the governor's has $6 million coming to us. We appreciate the $6 million. $6 million doesn't even cover the scratch in the bumper of this car. We have significant problems. Okay, part of the move of Wagner Pizer, that's $101 million of our previous $165 million budget. If I am charged with operating on a $60 million budget, and if that's what your decision is, we will have to cut Department of Labor by roughly half, from 1,200 to 600. That means I can no longer staff your career centers. I will not have staffing to do that, which means we're not compliant with the one stop. Furthermore, I already shared with you how we currently are processing claims until we modernize. There's no way I could process. So you will be faced with significant challenges back with claims not being processed. It's not a threat. It's just trying to educate you, and I promise all while you're in session and after, we'll educate you with that. We're asking right now and have met with leadership in the House and laid this out, and they're fully aware of what we're asking for. So I believe your leadership will be sharing with you what our ask is, and then you'll be able to decide that. So to make a dent in it, it's going to depend on whether or not the state wants to participate in any of this lift and shift and modernization, or you want the feds to do it. If I'm successful getting them to open up the $102 million, by the way, the $102 million is not a new appropriations federally. There's $500 billion, according to them, that was appropriated to states that never was utilized. So it's still sitting there. We're asking for them to just give us some grace, let us have access to our 102 that was designated for us, and then we'll comply and have it encumbered and utilized by June. You had to have it encumbered by December 31st. If we do that, we're taking care of half of the problem. Then we just need to put some of these pieces back together. So it's hard to give you a number. It sounds political, but it really depends.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Well, you did a great job, and I want to echo what Representative Seaball said. Very exciting, and appreciate your efforts, and look forward to working with you.
Mr. Chairman, again, please feel free to reach out to us anytime. We had members, I don't think she would mind me saying it, but met with Representative Cannon this morning, and we're already working on a solution for her. So that's what our job is.
All right. Thank you. And unless there's anything else good for the order, we will have a bill, maybe two, next week from the agencies. And with